Hi, I'm James Cook with Yale Realty and Capital Advisors. I want to talk today for a few minutes about rent control and some of the unintended consequences or effects of it. We are seeing a big push across the country, primarily in the northern coastal states, starting and it's creeping down towards rent control. And while on the surface it seems like a charitable idea to pass rent control to protect the resident of a park, there are definitely unintended consequences and it may not be constitutional. So just for a few minutes, if you'll bear with me, there's a story that's been coming up a lot lately that I've been thinking about. I saw Chris Pratt talking about his parents losing their mobile home in one of the mobile home parks in Palisades that burned down. And he was pointing out the very obvious effect of poor forest management and not having the water in the aquifers or in the retention areas to put out the fires, which are all very good points. Another point that I think everybody misses is that the state of California actually cost each of those residents millions of dollars, individually millions of dollars, and collectively maybe $1 billion. I did a quick look today. There was about 360 mobile home sites that were wiped out between 3 mobile home parks there in Pacific Palisades. And something that we learned having doing some research for one of the owners there before the fires was that this rent control was causing a distortion in the mobile home values, extreme distortion. Let me give you an example. They don't let the park owner turn the rents up or take the rents to market or closer to market when those homes sell. So when a resident would leave a home, they'd be able to transfer that home to the next resident, and that next resident would be able to inherit the old rent control. So what was happening over a 10 or 20 year period of time, however long that had been enacted, those rents were falling further and further behind the market, and the mobile home values were going higher and higher. There was cases where people had vacant lots, but they had a lease on it. And they would sell the lease on their vacant lot to the next person, which had the rent control still enacted. And they would sell the vacant lease for $600,000 to $1 million just for a lease. And one of the kind of more inferior parks there. So what happened was the lot rents were, I'm just going off of memory, but $1,500 a lot. And now the home values on average, let's say, were $1.5 million. What should have happened is those lot rents should have been $3,000 to $4,000. And those home values should have been $200,000 or $300,000. So in the long run, all these residents paid $1 million or more in addition to what they should have paid for those homes to buy the low lot rent. Then when the fires came, they lost all that equity because those homes were never worth $1.5 to $2.5 million. Those homes are only worth $200,000, $300,000 replacement cost. The only thing you were buying into was the artificially low lot rent. So what happens is that when you pass rent control, and this is extreme examples, but when you pass rent control, the first group of residents wins because all of a sudden they get capped rents. You can't go up in the rents anymore. They no longer follow the market, and their savings get larger and larger. Now their home values start rising. Every subsequent resident beyond that has to pay a premium for the house, too much for the house, just to buy into the lot rent. And there's a pretty good equation, the market works pretty efficiently, that the more they save in the lot rent, the more they pay for the house, and ultimately they don't save anything. But the risk they're taking is they're buying an uninsurable asset for much more than its replacement value. The number one thing you should look at with mobile home parks is what are the replacement values of those homes. And when they're paying more than replacement values for those homes, a 1970s, 1980s mobile home selling for $1.5 million, $2 million, that's only because the artificial lot rent. So it's easy, it's low-hanging fruit, but what nobody's talking about is the fact that the state of California costs these innocent residents millions, and collectively close to $1 billion. I added up 360 residents, each losing $1.5 to $2.5 million is a lot of money. It's $700 million collectively. And I'd love to make a bigger video on that, but these people should be outraged with their politicians for forcing them to overpay for mobile homes that were never worth that much because they were getting artificially low lot rent. A couple other points on rent control that I wanted to point out is the government's never proposed to regulate home prices in the neighborhoods around these parks. So this is why the mobile home prices go up so much. The home prices in Palisades are probably $5 million on average. So unless you can cap all real estate, which is obviously clearly never going to pass because nobody's going to vote to cap their real estate value or their home value. They're only going to vote to cap their landlord's home values or real estate values. So as you see the values naturally rise in the neighborhood with its desirability, that's what drives the value of the mobile homes up. So that's point number one. Point number two is the government never proposes to cap their own income, to cap all your expenses as a property owner. You have real estate taxes going up, you have payroll going up, you have insurance going up. These are things that are constantly rising on the landlord, much less the cost of maintenance. We've got a white paper out now you should download, but our cost of maintenance has probably doubled in these parks in 5 years, these communities in 5 years. So you have a rent control property. I've been to markets where there's no rent increases allowed without going before some arbitrary board that has no knowledge of your business. There's a market in Massachusetts like this, and their communities are in horrible disrepair because the landlords can't afford to improve them. That's one of my points. And then obviously I don't think these politicians want to take pay cuts. I would like them to, but they should be basically working for free. I think if they want to vote for stealing other people's money, they should vote to give up some of their own money. And the reality is if the voter thinks that these tenants need welfare, the voters should vote to pay that welfare for them. And there should be a means testing. Most welfare has a means testing. We have multi-millionaires in California and some other states. The Northeast is an example. People that are maybe worth tens of millions of dollars receiving welfare from the landlord because their rents are capped. How is there not a means testing? How are you just receiving arbitrary rent control across the board when you are maybe a multi-millionaire? I think this subject needs to be studied more. I think it's completely backfired. One of my favorite quotes was, there's a Nobel Peace Prize chair, and he said, the most effective way to destroy a city we have found is rent control, other than bombing. He said, the most effective way to destroy any city is rent control. It's a pretty amazing quote. Look it up. But thanks for your time, and let's continue this fight. The rent control is not working. It's backfiring, and it's going to cause a lot of unintended consequences.